The air in the forest cathedral was thick with the scent of pine and secret passion. Lyrian, his heart hammering against his ribs, led the beautiful Elara by the hand, each step taking them deeper into a solitude that felt meant only for them. He stopped before a wall of ancient ivy, his voice dropping to a whisper that was both a promise and a plea. "I've shown no one else this," he confessed, his eyes locked on hers. "Not my father, not the king's own guard. It is the heart secret of our kingdom, Elara. This passage leads directly into the castle vaults." He pulled the vines aside, revealing a dark, mossy crevice in the rock. He was giving her not just a secret, but the keys to the realm, all for the price of her smile. Her eyes, a shade of summer sky, widened, but not with the wonder he expected. There was a sharpness there, a calculation he mistook for all. "You trust me so deeply, Lyrian," she breathed, her fingers tightening on his. "With my life," he vowed, a naive and glorious certainty in his soul. "My love for you is my greatest truth." But Lyrian's greatest truth was Elara's greatest opportunity. For while he saw a future, she saw a transaction. Her family's name was a hollow shell, their wealth evaporated, their creditors circling like vultures. And from the shadows of the rival kingdom of Vorgoth, King Corvus had whispered a solution, unimaginable wealth, enough to restore her family's honor tenfold, in exchange for a key. She had not sought love, she had sought a tool. And Lyrian, poor, devoted Lyrian, had just handed it to her. The betrayal was as cold and precise as a surgeon's knife. Under the cover of a moonless night, Elara unbarred the hidden gate from within, her hands steady, her heart a block of ice. Shadowy figures, Vorgotha's finest and most brutal, streamed past her into the bowels of the castle. Their mission was not conquest, but decapitation. A single, silent spy, clad in night-black leather, slipped toward the royal chambers to assassinate King Theron in his sleep. The plot was foiled not by valor, but by a misplaced goblet. A servant dropped it, the clatter alerting the guards. A frantic, silent struggle ensued in the torchlit corridor before the spy was subdued. Dragged before the just and stern King Theron, the spy was offered a simple choice, a quick death, or a slow, painful one. He chose the third option, betraying his accomplice. A trembling, accusatory finger pointed directly at the nobleman who had been arrested the moment the spy was found. "It was him," the spy hissed. "Lyrian of House Greenwood. He showed us the way." Lyrian, dragged from his bed, still clutching the locket containing a curl of Elara's hair, could only stare in dumbfounded horror. His eyes scanned the throne room, finding her in the crowd. She stood perfectly still, her face a beautiful, emotionless mask. In that moment, the chains on his wrists were nothing compared to the chains of devastating clarity tightening around his heart. Gray and grim, the courtyard packed with citizens there to see the traitor noble meet his end. The air hummed with a mixture of outrage and morbid curiosity. Lyrian stood in chains, his posture defiant but his eyes hollow, fixed on Elara where she watched from a privileged balcony. King Theron, his face etched with disappointment, spoke the formal words of condemnation. "Lyrian of House Greenwood, you are sentenced to die for high treason. Do you have any last words?" Lyrian's voice, though rough from disuse, carried across the silent square. He looked only at her. "Only that I was a fool. I loved a ghost." But as the executioner raised his heavy axe, a sound more terrible than its fall tore the sky apart. The urgent, blaring scream of Vorgoth war horns. From the hills, a black tide of soldiers descended. King Corvus, his assassination plot failed, had come to finish the job with brute force. Arrows darkened the sky. Panic erupted. In the chaos, King Theron's eyes met Lyrian's. He saw not guilt, but a furious, desperate need to defend his home. "Unchain him," the king roared, tossing Lyrian a sword. "A man who wishes to die for his kingdom may first prove it by fighting for it." What followed was a legend born from damnation. Unarmored but burning with a righteous fury, Lyrian became a demon on the battlefield. He was a whirlwind of sharpened steel, leading a shattered defensive line into a ferocious countercharge. He fought with the terrifying strength of a man who has nothing left to lose, his every move a scream against the betrayal that had broken him. He drove deep into the Vorgoth ranks, a beacon of hope for the defending knights. But fate is a fickle archer. From the corner of his eye, a Vorgoth spearman saw an opening. The spearhead took Lyrien high in the side, piercing deep. The hero stumbled, his momentum gone, and fell to the blood-soaked mud, the world narrowing to a tunnel of pain and the sound of his own ragged breath. He awoke to the smell of antiseptic and blood in a medical tent. His body was a prison of agony. King Theron stood at his cot, his armor dented and bloody, the battle won. And beside him, held by 2 guards, was Elara. Her fine dress was torn and stained, her famed beauty erased by tear tracks and utter despair. The sight of Lyrien's sacrifice, the carnage she had unleashed for gold, had finally shattered her icy composure. She crumpled to her knees before the king, the confession torn from her. "It was I, your grace," she wept, the story of her family's ruin and Corvus's offer pouring out in a choked river of guilt. Lyrien was innocent. He gave me his heart, and I sold it for coin. King Theron, his face a storm of anger and a strange, weary pity, looked down at her. "You have brought death to our gates and to a good man's door," he pronounced. "I offer you a choice, a harder one than you offered him, exile. To live with this shame in a land that will never know your name. To stay and serve a people who will look upon you with nothing but distrust for the rest of your days." Sobbing, Elara turned from the king to the dying man on the cot. She crawled to Lyrien's side, her voice a raw whisper. How can I ever make up for this?" Lyrien turned his head, a movement of pure agony. His eyes, clouded with pain, held no forgiveness, only the profound exhaustion of a soul pushed beyond its limit. "You can't," he rasped, each word a final nail in the coffin of their story. "I would never trust you again. Now, leave me." The finality of it destroyed her. As she staggered to her feet, hollowed out and defeated, a glint of movement through the open tent flap caught her eye. Across the smoky battlefield, through the chaos of tending to the wounded, stood King Corvus. He had survived. And he had a bow, an arrow nocked and drawn. His aim was steady, directed at the unsuspecting back of King Theron, who was surveying the field. There was no time to shout. No time to think. There was only instinct. With a cry that was neither of fear nor pain, but of pure resolve, Elara ran. She threw herself into the path of the arrow just as the bowstring sang. The force of it was a punch that stole the world. She collapsed backward, landing hard at the foot of Lyrien's cot. The king spun around, his own sword drawn, just in time to see her fall and Corvus swallowed by his fleeing guards. Lyrien's eyes, hazy with approaching death, flew open wide. He struggled to focus on her, on the arrow protruding from her chest. A single tear of pure, bewildered anguish rolled through the grime on his cheek. "Why?" he gasped, the question containing everything he had ever felt for her. "Why would you do that?" Elara turned her head, her eyes finding his. A trickle of blood escaped the corner of her mouth, but her expression was serene, finally free of its calculated coldness. A faint, peaceful smile touched her lips. "Because," she whispered, her voice the softest of breezes, "true love forgives." And in that moment, he understood. Her act was not to earn his trust or her redemption. It was the only language left to tell him that his love, in the end, had not been a lie. That somewhere beneath the betrayal, something real had taken root and, in the final second, had bloomed. A profound peace settled over him, washing away the pain and the bitterness. He smiled, a true, unburdened smile, and as his own eyes closed for the last time, his trembling hand reached out. Their fingers touched, stained with the same earth, as the sounds of the victorious kingdom faded away around them. She had given him a secret to prove a false love, she gave him her life to prove it was real.